Awesome. I just introduced Peter. He's from XMTP, and he's going to be giving a workshop today on building native Web3 messaging and notification apps. When you're ready, Peter, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. We've been working with Livepeer and seeing a lot of apps built on Livepeer, so this is a really exciting event for us. So what I'm going to do is I'll share my screen here. So I'm going to walk you through XMTP, kind of describe how the protocol. Actually, I'll go to my overview slide. Give you a big picture of what XMTP is, talk about the core concepts, get into the SDK, show some examples, and then give some hackathon ideas and go through our resources available for developers. So big picture, developers are everything for us. We started the company a year ago with the sole premise of building a general purpose messaging protocol that developers in Web3 could use to stand up native messaging. So this has been true. What we allow developers to build are, in their native applications, user-to-user chat, one-to-many messaging, messages and notifications, meaning you could broadcast to 1,000 wallets, both in your app and then outside of your app. Machine-to-machine, so like automating messages and notifications using something like PKP from Lit, which we work very closely with. And soon, many-to-many, which is group chat. So we're getting ready to roll that out. And I would say that, the funnest thing I feel about with XMTP is just every team can build with XMTP. We find it's, from developers, easy to work with, and we try to do a really good job and just making the code very easy and approachable. We've spent a ton of time on really good documentation. We have several example apps that you can fork from our GitHub repos and stand up in minutes. So hopefully this is like a fun way to engage with XMTP and start to push the boundaries on what you can build in Web3. So an example, I don't, probably not many people heard, but Lens is using XMTP to power all of their DMs across the Lens ecosystem. So we launched with Lenster, which is, you can see here, 100,000 users are using it on the Lens protocol for DMs, which is cool, as well as things like Boson. So Boson launched their d-commerce platform, and they use XMTP to power conversations between buyers and sellers. And within that, it's not only chat, but they can send like invoices back and forth. They can send smart objects as part of the payload, and I'll get into that a little bit later. As well as, people are building, as I mentioned, apps on Livepeer. So like content gating, using Livepeer as the video stream, but then sending access codes to users using XMTP, which is really cool to see. And then, really just at this point, hundreds of other apps across Web3 are using XMTP to build messaging and notification experiences. So at the core, for us, this developer collaboration is really key. And, some things I'll talk about a little bit later. It isn't about just the hackathon, but we're really invested in building out the ecosystem in the community. So we have a grants program coming out. We're working with teams to help them raise money. So as you work through this process and think about XMTP and projects you can build, it isn't about today, but it's about tomorrow and starting companies with us and how we can continue to build out, these experiences through Web3. So if you want to try XMTP, it's really easy, and you don't have to do this now. Hopefully we can circulate this deck, but you can see how simple it is to use. You can go to demo.xmtp.chat, and you can send me a message at petermdenton.eth. So as you can see, if you want to do this, really lightweight experiences that you can build really fast. Again, this is completely native. Everything's end-to-end encrypted. And soon like fully decentralized. So right now we're hosting our own nodes, and this is an example app that we built, but next year everyone can host their own nodes and be a participant in the network. And our core mission is letting people build apps that have almost zero latency. So as you can see, messages are relayed instantaneously and can support everything that you would think about from a general purpose messaging app. So let me get into, what is XMTP? So it's really, our core mission is building this open, composable, and decentralized communication network for blockchain wallets, right? So this is really important to us. If you think about Web 2 with SMTP, that's exactly what we've set out to build in XMTP. So our goal is to, over the next few years, to fully decentralize, as I mentioned. And what that means, this doesn't become something that we own and maintain. It will be controlled by the open source community, and it's meant to be a public good for developers to be able to build messaging across. And the idea is that we're building out the network so that developers can plug in and then they can send messages and reach users wherever they are in the XMTP network, which I think is really cool. So instead of building, like in Web 2, all we have are, are like walled gardens. So you have Messenger, or you have Telegram, or you have these different things. In Web 3, what we're enabling is much like email, where messages will be relayed to people wherever they are. So they could be on Lens, or they could be on, another app. And if they choose, that application chooses to do so, they can receive, their users can receive those messages anywhere on the network. So we feel like we're solving a really big problem that we think about as interoperability, and letting people send messages and know that they're going to be received by the user and then receive a reply. So this is a big problem in Web3 that we're trying to solve. Right now, our protocol is built on top of Waku, which is with signal arid status, and then libp2p. So we've used some really good technologies that are underlying, and we've spent a year building on top of those to make those really robust, secure, and scalable for Web3. So we think that's really cool. We're also contributing very closely with those communities. We built a lot of code that they're now using. So we've taken something from open source community, we built on top of it, and we'll open source that to the Web3 community. XMTP is not on-chain. So like our messages don't live on-chain. We're like a parallel network. So how it happens is, a user signs with a wallet. It creates an identity on the XMTP network, and then we store and relay those messages. So they're persisted in the nodes across the XMTP network. And then wherever a user is on the network, meaning a user could be on Lens, a user could be on a different application, a user could spin up their own application in a couple minutes, and then they can access all of their messages from any client on the network. So this truly is where users start to own their messages, where once we're fully decentralized, messages then live forever, meaning you could host your own node and you could access any of your messages till the end of time. That's really what we're setting out to build. And we're not only doing that at the protocol level, but then at the SDK that I'll get into, we've built XMTP in a way at the SDK level that we can enable a diverse set of use cases. So it isn't like just text going back and forth, but as you'll see, we have extensible payloads. You can send smart objects as part of messages. You can send notifications from machines, like DApp to wallet notifications. So we've really designed the protocol and SDK in a way that it can support all general purpose messaging, and then even do things that are completely unique to Web3. So the core concepts, again, talking about the protocol is responsible for users being able to send and receive encrypted messages through clients. The protocol, again, handles the authentication, creates the identity, and then persists all of the storage in the nodes across the XMTP network. As I mentioned, we're going to be open sourcing the node software soon, and then other people can start to run their own nodes. So in that way, it'll be a distributed network. Clients and nodes are implemented as Waku2 peers. So it's like a gossip network. So when we receive a message, it sends it out to all the peers. But we built specialized functions and capabilities on top of Waku, as I mentioned. So then clients are, essentially what you would be building are responsible for encoding and decoding messaging formats through a standard interface. So as you'll see in our SDK, pretty easy for you to use everything that we built. So a message comes in, it's encrypted, and so the client then understands the identity. When the user signs, understands the encryption schema, and then decodes the message formats. And then clients submit and retrieve encrypted messages to and from the network, obviously. So a lot of that happens client side, and then you submit an encrypted message into the network. And then the clients also generate that secure wallet-based identity. So as you'll see in the code, when you sign, user signs with their wallet, clients then generate the identity, the XMTP identity. And that is used obviously in the encryption schema of encrypting and decrypting. And so this is really important, where every single message that gets sent over the XMTP network is end-to-end secure. And a lot of people say that, meaning the storage layer is secured, but with XMTP, it's actually each message itself. So meaning somebody may be able to break into a message, but they can only break into that one message. It's not like they're breaking into the entire storage layer, they're breaking into a single message. And so we think that's really, really important. Obviously, now and moving forward, that messages, every single message is encrypted using an identity and an encryption schema based on the sender and receiver alone. And then obviously the network clients persist the wallet-based identities locally or within the network, meaning that you can persist a relationship with the user so that they don't have to perpetually sign to access messages. Nodes, right now we're hosting our own nodes, but when people are hosting their own nodes, the nodes are responsible for relaying encrypted messages into replicated storage, receiving those encrypted messages from storage, and then delivering them to the clients. So if you think about right now, there's hundreds of clients on the XMTP network. Our nodes are responsible for sending and relaying messages to the appropriate nodes where the users are accessing those messages, and then persisting and advertising, meaning pushing out to wallet-based identities. All right, so getting into the architecture, essentially it's pretty straightforward. If you think about it, people are building a series of apps. Those apps are like we're working with big wallets. We're also working with apps like Lenster, which is on the Lens protocol, and 100 other apps. So those apps basically have a composer component that is from the SDK and inbox, all using the XMTP client SDK. So if you think about it, the experiences that we deliver are not where you go to like xmtp.chat to access all of your messages, meaning we're not expecting people to go out and build email, although they very well could. As you'll see in the xmtp.chat example app, you could build a general purpose messaging client that could act like a Gmail to see all of your messages in one place. But we're really focused on delivering these native experiences. So in the wallets we're working with, or apps like Lenster, they can actually stand up DMs that look and feel native to their application. And then they can customize, all of the views. Right now it's in React.js. So all of the React views, like how they want to compose messages, the list of recipients, for example, in Lens, it could be like, all right, let me start to pre-populate messages, recipients based on everybody that I'm following. Or it could be in a wallet, everybody that I've transacted with in the past. So what's really cool about that is you get all of the raw functionality through XMTP, but you can customize it based on the experience and then overlay it with functionality specific to your application. So we think, apps being completely composable, like different Lego blocks with different protocols in Web3 is really core, where at the end of the day, the application developer can control the entire experience. Obviously, underlying all of this is the XMTP network. Right now, we're hosting all of our own nodes. So messages go in and out of the nodes. But tomorrow, this changes where third-party nodes will be a core part of the infrastructure. Also with that, we're still working on our incentives model. There's a lot of considerations, but core to that will be rewarding nodes on the network. So if you think about, there's multiple ways that you can participate with XMTP. You could be an application developer and create an application experience, or you could be a third party and host a node and contribute to the health and holistic value of the network and be rewarded in both ways. The other thing that I want to call out here, which I think is really cool and important about XMTP, is the way that we're designing everything is to be like a layered approach to add value to dApps, wallets, marketplaces. So as I showed you in the previous screen, right now people are building apps that are basically like, I have an inbox, I can compose messages, there's functionality on the back end where I could send, one message to 1,000 people. over time, like right now we're working with several companies sort of behind the scenes that are working on, spam and safety or social graphs, right? So that people, for example, with Lit or Lens or CyberConnect, where people can plug this in and access a social graph or identity. So what's really important about this from a developer perspective as we build out this network and ecosystem is we just see a lot of opportunity for people to create products and build companies around. Because, for example, when our network is reaching tens of millions of users, there's going to be a lot of needs from application developers to solve really core problems. For example, such like spam and safety. So we've built XMTP in a way that you can layer in services. What we don't want to do is be prescriptive on anything beyond sort of the encryption schemas and in the nodes. So as you think about building apps, there's just multiple levels that you can think about building apps with XMTP and create value. And our entire purpose is going to be getting applications funded, getting applications visibility, and growing with our network. So what we're starting to do is build out, for NFT marketplaces. Here's the playbook. Here's all of the different apps within that stack, how they work together. So our whole goal over next year is getting applications from, hackathon developers and people building apps traction, and so that they can grow with the network. And then over time, the architecture will continue to get more and more robust. Everybody contributing creates more value, and XMTP as a whole gets better. So chains, it's pretty much chain agnostic. Right now, we're focused on EVM chains because that's where we've started. Like it'll work out of the box on Polygon. It'll work on any network. Again, if it signs its ends, focused on EVM right now. We do have plans to port, we'll go to Solana likely next. But for now, I think you'll see it works pretty well across supported ecosystems. And then over the next year, we'll announce our roadmap on, additional chains and support. Okay, the SDK. So the SDK basically covers wallet-based authentication, wallet connection management, key pair generation, the storage of those keys, the signing of those keys, initiation of relationships between senders and receivers. So when you initiate that you want to send, that the receiver can accept that and create that relationship. The initiation of a conversation, meaning when you want to compose a message, all of that is handled in the SDK. Message sending, obviously a user can access their entire history of their messages. The other thing that we just introduced with Lens is this idea of content filtering, meaning based on a specific app, you can sandbox it to only receive messages sent from that specific app, which is really cool. So essentially, Lenster could have a view where they could say, only show me messages that are sent from users on Lens. And then another tab, which could be, show me messages sent from anybody on the XMTP network. So this stuff starts to get really cool. If you think about like Twitter's DMs right now, you basically have, everyone that I follow, and then everyone else. You can think about XMTP as this global DM layer where it is, everybody within my app, and then everybody else across Web3. So it starts to become this really cool customizable experience where messages can flow everywhere, but application developers can completely customize the experience. The SDK also handles message streaming. So right now messages get pushed out. So think about it, your messages, your client is sitting there waiting for messages, and the SDK handles that. Content validation, this is really important. So as I mentioned, and I'll get into in a little bit, we have this thing that I think is really, really cool. And again, let me put a big asterisk on me presenting this. I am not an engineer. I'm a marketer, but this stuff I really love. So the X in XMTP stands for extensible. And what we've designed is at the protocol level, it's sort of like dumb pipes, really, focused on message delivery, encryption, and storage. And there's like a base schema to message payloads around, text, sender, recipient, timestamp, all the things that you would think is like the lowest common denominator in sending a message. On top of that, we have this thing called content types, which are extensible payloads. extensible payloads can, contain smart objects. So this is really cool. Like you can, a lot of people at hackathons have built things where like you can attach an attachment using IPFS, and then you could even use something like lit to token gate accessing that content. And that can be sent packaged into a message and encrypted using XMTP, meaning I could send somebody a message that would have that attachment, and then it could do something else. Like one, the receiver would have to decrypt it. So it's validating that the sender and receiver are exactly who the message is intended for. So one, the receiver has to unencrypt that. And then two, it can do additional things like check against smart contracts for tokens, or it could look for certain criteria that application developers define to then let that user unlock that attachment. So this is actually really cool. Like cool for I think a number of reasons. One, you can really build objects however you choose. So it's entirely extensible. And what we mean by content validation is the SDK will actually look to see that base structure of a message. And then if the application recipient has support for that content object, it will display it. If not, we have graceful degradation where it'll then say, the application was sent using this attachment type. You can go and access this attachment here. So what's really cool about that is, one, you can build any experience you want in your own app. So if your users on your app are sending and receiving messages back and forth, you have this entirely extensible payload format to play with. Two, we then facilitate content types across applications and publish standards. So like we're working with Protocol Labs on an IPFS attachment type. We're working with other people where people can send Matic back and forth. We're working with people to build out and standardize all of these content types so that applications will have support in their SDKs to render all these experiences. How this stuff becomes really powerful for applications is when users are sending and receiving messages outside of their applications, meaning, DMs are traveling across all of Web3, these objects actually become, ways for people to engage with new and different applications. So in a way, it's like saying, hey, when I send an attachment on Gmail and you haven't signed up for G Suite and you need an account to access that attachment, it drives adoption into G Suite. So we're seeing, this ecosystem that we enable through content types where applications are able to attach themselves to messages and actually drive engagement and new users all through XMTP. So all that happens through content validation and format validation so that application developers are completely free to build any experience they want. But at the end of the day, no matter where those messages show up, it's an elegant experience for the user, and there's grace for degradation so that the user can always access their content and we don't break any UIs. So the SDK is handling all of that, and the SDK over time will become more and more powerful. So supported wallets, very generic, like identities are tied to wallets. So connected wallet must be present in order to initialize the client, meaning, you need to use something like Wallet Connect or Rainbow Kit to initialize the client. And then based on that identity, the SDK creates that abstraction. And then for now, identities must be generated and associated with, an Ethereum wallet's public address and private key. That's how we do the encryption and decryption. Content types, I already talked about this probably too much, but I would say that when you think about with, Livepeer and video, this is exactly how you could use a content type. So we have some hackathon ideas around, sending and receiving video messages. This would absolutely be a content type. And I think as you get into it, you'll see there's a lot of fun. At a previous event we were just at, you can see application developers were doing things where people could actually designate a price to receive a messages. And then when they read that message, could claim a bounty on reading that message. So I just bring this up because it's really up to everyone's creativity, and it opens so much in what you can do across messaging. And it really is like the T in XMTP is transport. So we're starting to see that just more and more developers are understanding us as this transport layer where they can move objects around. We've also seen really cool things with gaming companies where they've actually sent, instead of like airdropping to players, which are getting filtered out more and more through wallets, they can actually send, something like a button like, hey, we want to send you a loot box. And when you accept it, it'll like execute the smart contract and then put it into the user's wallet. We've seen people send NFTs around. So there's just like no bounds to your creativity in using this. And I think with video, it's even better. So I'll go through this quickly and then get to questions. Like security, we take security extremely serious. We have an awesome security team really focused on unfalsifiable relationships between identities. So if you look at like most of the biggest problems in Web3, outside of all the craziness over the last week, a lot of it is like fraud through spoofing an identity, right? So people go onto Discord, they can impersonate really easily. They impersonate on Twitter, and then they get people to click links and then, rug them. XMTP solves that problem, right? So the SDK, proves that it's unfalsifiable, that the sender and receiver are who they say they are. And we think that's incredibly important, especially as things start to expand and, different companies come into this space. We're really like solving that problem. The other thing is we've really tried to be forward thinking about this. And, we know that in the future, algorithms will change. So we've designed it where these are like abstracted away, the encryption and security algorithms, so that we can replace these as things continue to grow. And then we would work with application developers on that. But I think it's really cool. We've been forward thinking and designed the entire system in a way that, we can replace these things without breaking all the apps across our network. So hackathon ideas, I think there's a ton of really cool stuff. Like one, just like this Marco Polo clone, people have asked for this several times, like different users, just being able to like take a short message, record it, on Livepeer, and then send it using XMTP and have that conversation back and forth. I think that would be, pretty straightforward to build and something that we would definitely want to give a prize to. The other thing is like you can token gate video content using XMTP chat. So like somebody could say, oh, there's a stream about to start, you need an access code. And then there would be some workflow where they could then get an access code generated and sent to them over XMTP. Again, it's really important to think about like with XMTP, it's end-to-end encrypted. So that's unique to that sender and receiver. So it's like this provable identity so that people can't do fraud and steal this, and then they could access the video content. And then, the other thing that we've seen is like different things like Zoom experiences built on Web3, where people could, be watching a stream and then use XMTP to chat on the side. Resources. We just launched a big new developer portal, xmtp.org, that should have most of everything you need. It has a ton of examples, a lot of really good documentation, and, a series of articles that we've published. GitHub.com/XMTP has our SDK that has a fully functional React app that you can fork and like literally stand up on Vercel in a couple minutes, and like a really easy to use quick start. Our docs are at docs.xmtp.org. And then we have a Discord, discord.gg/XMTP. We are super collaborative as a company. So as you run into problems, you can go into Discord and you can get a response in a couple minutes. My colleague just started, a guy named Rich Bustos. He's absolutely awesome. He's our new developer relations lead. He wasn't able to give this talk today because he just started, but he'll be there in the channel and responsive. And again, don't be afraid to like reach out, even if it's like, hey, here's an idea that we're thinking about. Is this good or bad? We'll hop on a call. We'll do whatever it takes to help you build an app and make this a great experience. The other thing that I'll say is we've also heard from a lot of teams about how to get help in fundraising. So turning side projects into companies. On December 7th at 8 a.m. PST, 11 EST, which I think is 4 GMT, or might be 5. We're doing a really cool workshop fundamentals of raising money, even in bear markets, how to find angels for raising money, how do term sheets work. We've already been working with a handful of teams and help them raise money. This is something that we'll continue to do over and over. So as you think about how to build a company, I think this is a great workshop, and it's not just for people who submit XMTP prizes, it's for anybody. So as you think about it, if this is something that's interesting, reach out to me and I'll send you an invite so you can attend the event. Again, I'll go through this quickly. We're really focused on decentralization. So, we know that that means a lot of lip service to people, but for us, it's like a core value and something that, is absolutely mission critical. And we think that's really important from a messaging protocol. What we don't want to become is a messaging monopoly. And while that sounds like that would be a great business, we know that it will hurt everyone in the long run. One, single point of failure through governance, and then two, we want the market to drive the economics. So if there's costs associated with sending messages in 2 years, that's driven by the market, everyone hosting nodes, and which will dramatically reduce the price, and not a single player that could just set the price at whatever. So decentralization is not only core to us and that we believe in decentralization and we know how important it is, but it also is fundamental to how our business works. And so you'll see a lot of progress from us in the next year. And then the protocol will become owned by the community. So it'll become all open source. So I think as you think about building, there's ways that you can build at the protocol level, at the SDK level, at the application level, at the service level. There's just a lot of things to do with XMTP. And then right now it's in React.js, but React Native and Flutter are coming out in the next couple of weeks. There's already a version of React Native that you can use on our SDK. We're just continuing to enhance a few things over the next few weeks. And then we're working on Swift and Kotlin, so people building iOS apps. And then there's ways that you can do server-side implementations using PKP, but we'll have some more native support in the next year. I know that was a lot to take in. I think I'm at time, and I apologize because I'm sure we'll get cut off for questions, but my email is peter@xmtp.com. You can send me a message at xmtp.chat, petermdenton.eth, or you can access in discord.gg/xmtp. Please reach out and let me know I can be helpful, especially if it's around validating your idea or getting help with the technicalities any time during the day. And then however we can help long-term, let us know. We want to collaborate. We want to help people build companies and great products. So it's really up to you, and we'll be here to support. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Peter. That was great. Really interesting, and lots of great use cases in this hackathon. So we do have time for some questions. So everyone put them in the chat. Don't be shy. We've got about 10 minutes or so. Or you can ask it live as well. Just while everyone's writing their questions, what would be your sort of top tips for using XMTP for the first time?
I think just stand up, the example React app. I think you'll see it's easy to understand based on the code. So if you go to our GitHub repo, download your example app, and then you can run it locally on Vercel. You'll just see, the different components around retrieving messages, signing, creating key pairs. So a lot of people will jump into the docs and then try and start building out piece by piece. But I think most people have found a lot more success just starting with the example app and kind of ripping that apart. And then, they're able to build apps in a couple hours versus kind of spinning their wheels for, a day. Awesome. Great question though. The other thing I would say is if there's just use cases that you're, thinking about and struggling with, just ping me on Discord or, send me a message. At this point, we probably have, 40 or 50 libraries of XMTP plus Lit, XMTP plus Alchemy, XMTP plus Livepeer. So we have a lot of code examples that people can make use of. So for us, it's all about unlocking creativity and people being able to build the experience that they see in their head. And we've done a lot of work in making sure that we can, remove the friction of just, the baseline code So as you think about it, don't hesitate to reach out, and we probably have a library that you can use that's all open source to get started.
Got a question in the chat there?
Yeah, so like Google Meet, but Web3. I'm seeing a question in the chat. Yeah, totally. So Carlos asked the question, is it possible to build meeting apps? Yeah, we actually have a couple examples. If you want to follow up with me, we've done it where people have, basically a Zoom-like experience, and then on the sidebar use XMTP chat to chat back and forth. So I'll definitely follow up with you and can send you an example of something that somebody built previously. I think it's a great use case. The other thing then is, like, again, with these content types, then you can have attachments. So the speaker could be talking about something and then send everyone an attachment as part of a message. So this stuff becomes really cool. Again, then you could also like content gate the chat itself. So if people need an access code and can get a request one through XMTP. Yeah, awesome. Same thing, decentralized job board. That's huge. That's an awesome use case. Two sides of that marketplace can talk back and forth over XMTP. They can do it all just by basically using a wallet to sign an identity and then have that chat. So I think that's an awesome use case. Cool. So I'll be sure to follow up and send you a couple of things. I love that.
Awesome. If we have no more questions, I think we will wrap things up a few minutes early. Is Twitter a good way to contact you?
Yeah. Here's my Twitter handle. It's the same. That's my Telegram handle as well. Should be, again, my email. Although I shouldn't even be using email. I should only use XMTP. Peter@xmtp.com. And again, xmtp.chat.
Awesome.
Any of those means, I will be very responsive.
Perfect. We can try and share those with the hackers as well, because this session is recorded and will be uploaded hopefully in the next 24 hours or so. So I think we will wrap things up there. Thank you, Peter, for coming in. It was really, really great. Appreciate your time. Do you have any sort of closing comments?
No, I'm excited to see what people build. Again, excited to see what people built today, excited to help, projects get funding and continue building. We're really invested for the long term. So reach out, collaborate with us. We'll be super responsive and helpful, and really looking forward to meeting everyone.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, we'll wrap things up there, guys. Thanks again, Peter, for coming in, and everyone have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.